One afternoon in France around the 1940s, a man named Nock was seen trying to escape from debt collectors. When he was caught, the debt collectors beat him and threatened that if he still couldn't settle his debts by the next day, Nock would die. The next day, Nock was perplexed. How could he possibly pay off all his debts when even affording food was a struggle, to the point of having to dig a hole only to cover it up and resorting to deceiving people here and there? At the port, Nock accidentally saw a job vacancy that read, "A doctor is needed for a cruise ship." Even though he knew nothing about medical science, Nock boldly applied. At first, the ship's captain doubted Nock's appearance, but since it was very difficult to find a doctor at that time, the captain eventually accepted him. Just as the ship was about to depart, the debt collector named Lenski and his accomplice arrived and tried to chase after him, but they were too late. Nock managed to escape while bidding farewell to Lenski. On the new ship, Nock felt free. Suddenly the crew brought in a patient. Seeing that the patient was weak and pale, Nock was confused. Fortunately, the patient knew he was suffering from typhoid, having previously experienced exactly this illness, and explained how to treat the disease. Upon hearing the explanation, Nock immediately took notes and followed the instructions. That afternoon, after successfully treating his first patient, Nock walked around the ship to get some fresh air. While strolling, he was surprised to see a visitor with a face reddened by prolonged sun exposure. The visitor said, "Nock, do not worry. Your face will heal on its own in a week or two." Instantaneously, Nock remembered that he had once read a book about how to make a skin cream to remove redness. That night, after gathering all the ingredients, Nock began to mix the cream. The next morning, he gave his compounded cream to the visitor from the day before, assuring him that if he applied it regularly, the sunburn-induced redness would soon disappear without having to wait 2 weeks. 2 days later, while Nock was sleeping, the same visitor came back and showed that his face was starting to improve. Apparently, Nock's cream was effective. Overjoyed, the visitor even offered to pay any amount as long as Nock would make the cream again. Hearing this, Nock was very happy. For the first time in his life, he could earn money in a lawful way. Not only that, the condition of his first patient gradually improved as well. Nock then sought out the ship's captain and, from the bottom of his heart, expressed his gratitude, thanking him for giving him the opportunity to start a new life. 5 years passed, and now Nock had become a real doctor. That afternoon, he was on a train heading to a remote village on the outskirts of a city. He had been requested to replace a doctor who had recently resigned, named Dr. Parpalai. Upon arriving at the clinic, Nock met a couple who were the caretakers of the place. They explained that Dr. Parpalai had quit because very few villagers came to the clinic for treatment. Even though most of the villagers were modern, they still did not have much trust in medical treatment. Upon hearing this, Nock smiled and said that he had a way to bring many people to the clinic. The next day, after preparing the clinic, Nock paid the postal worker to inform the villagers that on Tuesday, when the clinic opened, he would offer free treatment to everyone. After that, Nock went to the nearest pharmacy. When the pharmacist, named Mosk, found out that Nock was a doctor, he confided, "With or without a doctor, the pharmacy is always empty. If this continues, I might soon go bankrupt." Calmly, Nock proposed a collaboration. He planned to lure the villagers to seek free treatment at the clinic. Nock was convinced that when people heard the word free, they would flock in, even if they weren't sick. He then planned to educate the villagers about healthy living and encourage them to buy vitamins from the pharmacy. In the end, no one would lose out. Nock would get many patients, Mosk's pharmacy would be busy, and the villagers could live healthier lives. Upon hearing the plan, Mosk agreed. When they returned to the clinic, the postal worker reported that he had completed his task. In the midst of their conversation, a beautiful girl named Adele came and handed a letter to the postal worker. Seeing Adele's beauty, Nock was utterly captivated. It was the first time in his life he had seen a woman as beautiful as her. As Adele left, the postal worker recounted that the beautiful girl had grown up poor and alone, and that now she worked at the house of a grumpy old woman who owned a farm named Cock for a meager wage. Hearing this, Knock's heart was touched, for he too had once experienced the hardships of life. News about Dr. Knock spread throughout the village. At the local bar, people continuously talked about him, although one pastor named Lupus did not like him. Lupus claimed that Knock was impolite and that, as a new resident, he should have introduced himself to both Lupus and the mayor before opening the clinic. Then Tuesday arrived, and all the villagers visited Knock's clinic, including Cook, who remarked that he wasn't really sick at all. He had come simply because it was free. Although annoyed, as a professional doctor, Knock still examined Cook's health. After the checkup, Knock advised him that in old age one is quite susceptible to gout, pneumonia, or other dangerous ailments. He stressed that to stay healthy one must regularly take vitamins and get plenty of rest, and promised to visit Cook's home every week for a checkup, since Knock knew that his patients would likely be too lazy to visit the clinic repeatedly. Not long after, Lupus arrived, but just as he was about to get angry, Knock immediately examined him and gave him a prescription for vitamins. Receiving free treatment, Lupus eventually fell silent. The next day, Knock began visiting each villager's home one by one for routine checkups. A few days later, people at the bar continued to praise Knock's satisfying service. Lupus became even more upset, jealous that ever since Knock's arrival, families no longer praised him. That evening, Knock, Lupus, and several villagers had dinner at the mayor's house. There, everyone once again praised the doctors, including a wealthy widow named Pon. After introducing himself, Knock invited Pon to receive treatment at his clinic, hoping that if she experienced his excellent service, she would recommend his clinic to her friends. Already interested, Pon accepted the invitation. The next day, when Pon came as usual, Knock tried to open her mind to healthy living. Thankfully, Pon understood. She even requested that Knock visit her home for checkups 5 times a week, for an extraordinarily high fee. That afternoon, during one of his routine visits, Knock encountered Adele again. Adele confided that ever since she started coming to the clinic, Cook's behavior had become troublesome. Knock kept telling Cook to rest so much that even when merely fetching a drink, Adele had to do it for him. Hearing this, Knock couldn't help but tease the old lady.
2. Tekrar. 1, 2. 1, 2. 2. 1, 2.
Days passed. One afternoon, just after finishing work in calm weather, a woman named Elizabeth entered the clinic, removed her top, and flirted. Alas, Knock's heart belonged only to Adele, so he politely refused Elizabeth. That night, all the villagers attended a party at Pon's house, including Knock. Amid the festivities, Knock accidentally saw Adele arguing with a man. She even slapped him before storming off. Knock hurriedly chased after her and escorted her home. On the way, Adele confided that the man was her boyfriend, but they had just broken up because he was caught cheating. Seeing the woman he loved in distress, Knock tried to comfort her. Meanwhile, at the party, when Lupus went to the kitchen, he caught a vagabond stealing food. It turned out that the vagabond was Lenski, the very debt collector who had chased Knock 5 years ago. Although Lenski was caught stealing, instead of being scared, he threatened that if Lupus dared to report him, he would break Lupus's neck. Out of fear, Lupus could only remain silent. The next morning, Adele arrived at the clinic in a panic and asked Knock to go to a certain place. On a hill, Adele showed him a dog that was severely injured and had been unable to get up for 4 days. Fortunately, the dog's leg was only sprained, and after being treated, it immediately ran off at a great speed. Before parting ways, they sat together, sharing stories about their lives while enjoying the beautiful scenery. That afternoon, when Knock went to the pharmacy and invited Mosk to come out, he did not realize that Lenski was secretly watching him from afar. Later, Knock and Mosk went to a hotel where they invited the hotel owner to collaborate. Knock planned to transform the hotel into a complete health facility, complete with a health room, a rehabilitation center, a motel for the families of patients who stayed overnight, and a cafeteria, what we would now call a hospital. Since all the villagers, including the hotel owner, trusted Nock, the owner agreed immediately without many questions. The next day on the road, Nock encountered Lenski. When Nock saw Lenski standing in front of him, he was struck silent with fear. Lenski explained that ever since his boss had died, he had been forced to live as a vagabond, moving from one village to another. He never expected that Nock, who had once been poor and known for deceiving many people, would now be well established. Realizing Lenski's intentions, Nock understood that Lenski was trying to intimidate him. Nock then paid off all his debts in full and told Lenski to leave immediately so as not to spread his past disgrace to the villagers. However, Lenski demanded triple the amount as hush money, promising to disappear from the village if Nock paid him. With no choice but to comply, Lenski asked for time to gather the money. Later that afternoon, while Nock was checking on Cook's health, Cook confided that he had been forced to do all the household chores alone since that morning because Adele was ill. Worried, Nock immediately went to see Adele. Finding her in a very weak state, he advised her to come to the clinic for further examination. Before leaving, he gave her a gift, saying that he had planned to take her out and present her with a present. But since she was sick, he could only give her the gift. Adele smiled happily at this small yet very special gesture. A few days after the examination, Nock was shocked when he saw Adele's test results. He then contacted a lung specialist colleague for consultation. Based on the test results, the lung specialist explained that Adele was suffering from tuberculosis. Nock then pleaded with his colleague to take care of Adele until she fully recovered, regardless of the cost. Nock would pay as long as Adele got well. The next day, after packing his belongings, Nock went to see Adele off at the station. Before parting, he kissed her and reassured her that she would definitely recover. From a distance, Elizabeth, who happened to pass by and witnessed their affection, felt hurt by her rejected love and planned to complain to the pastor. At the church, Elizabeth recounted to Lupus what she had seen. Not only that, she also slandered Nock by claiming that he had once tried to rape her and had removed her top while examining her. Upon hearing Elizabeth's story, Lupus was pleased, for he now had a weapon to destroy Nock. On the other hand, after seeing Adele off, Nock went to the hotel that was planned to be turned into a hospital. The hotel owner informed him that his friend, Lenski, had rented a room at the hotel since the previous day. Shocked, Nock immediately went to see Lenski. In the room, Nock gave Lenski the agreed hush money and then ordered him to leave the village immediately. However, Lenski refused and instead demanded even more money. Although annoyed, Nock tried to remain calm and said he would provide the additional money that Lenski demanded at the clinic that night. That night, as agreed, Lenski met Nock at the clinic. Before handing over the money and with a smile, Nock told Lenski to drink first. Once Lenski had consumed the water, Nock's plan succeeded, for the drink had been mixed with an emetic. Meanwhile, Lupus was seen heading to the mayor's office to report Elizabeth's story. Lupus was convinced that Adele's departure was due to her being pregnant out of wedlock. Moreover, Lupus also reported that Nock had molested Elizabeth, but instead of getting angry, the mayor calmly explained that Adele had left only to seek treatment at a larger clinic in the city. As for Elizabeth's story, it might have been nothing but her own fabrication. After all, she had previously spread false rumors about the mayor as well. Hearing the mayor's response, Lupus fell silent. The next day, while Nock was chatting with Pawn on the road, the postal worker arrived and informed them that Lenski had asked him to call Nock because he had been suffering from continuous stomach pains all day, to the point that the toilet in his hotel room was clogged. Nock pretended to be surprised and said he would immediately treat his friend. That afternoon, when Nock arrived, Lenski, still in pain, pleaded for treatment. With a laugh, Nock said he could easily treat him, provided that Lenski signed a statement promising never to bother him again, and that if Lenski dared disturb him further, Nock would report him to the police. With no other choice, Lenski gave in, signed the document, and hurriedly took care of his business. Since that incident, Lenski finally left the village. The next day, Nock visited Adele. In her room, he reassured her by saying that the doctor treating her was the best in the country. "So, be confident that you will definitely recover," he said, "for you have always been on your own since childhood." Moved by Nock's concern, Adele advised, "If someday I pass away, do not be sad. A good man like you must continue to live his days happily." Hearing those words, Nock bowed his head, holding back his tears. That night, Nock read the letter Adele had given him during his visit. In the letter, Adele wrote that she loved the color blue very much. To surprise her, the next day Nock asked the owner of the hotel, now converted into a hospital, to paint the building blue, so that when she returned, it would be the most beautiful surprise of her life. However, in the midst of their conversation, the mayor arrived and announced that he had just received news that Adele had passed away. That afternoon at the church, all the villagers attended Adele's funeral. As the pastor, Lupus led the prayer and recounted all of Adele's virtues throughout her life. Yet, while everyone was mourning, Lupus seized the opportunity to attack Nock, claiming that he pitied Adele because in her final days the beautiful girl had been deceived by a swindler like Nock. It turned out that before leaving, Lenski had already exposed Nock's past misdeeds, his frequent debts and deceptions. Lupus even declared that a swindler did not deserve to be a doctor. Nock, having endured enough, then revealed everything in front of the villagers. "Yes, I was once a swindler, truly a lowly, impoverished man with debts everywhere. But I did it only to survive. My money was never for gambling, drinking, or debauchery. All this time I have worked hard and studied relentlessly to become a doctor who could serve society. If the villagers do not want to be treated by someone with my past, then I will leave." After pouring out his heart, Nock immediately went to the clinic and packed his belongings. At the church, the villagers were deeply moved. They shared stories about the improvements they had experienced since Dr. Nock's arrival. Some had quit smoking, some had healed their dental issues, others felt healthier and more fit, and many ailments had been cured. In the middle of the conversation, a child suddenly burst in, shouting that he had just seen Dr. Nock packing his belongings. All the villagers then rushed after the doctor, leaving Lupus alone. On the road, as Nock was about to leave, he was shocked to see the entire village surrounding him. Frightened, he feared they would beat him up, initially thinking they were angry because of Lupus's incitement. However, they all pleaded with him not to leave. Ever since Dr. Nock arrived, the villagers' lives had become healthier. Perhaps his past was indeed checkered, but his presence now was truly meaningful. They understood that Lupus was simply envious, and that was only natural. They even suggested that perhaps they could help Lupus open his heart to accepting Dr. Nock. Touched by the villagers' words, Nock was deeply moved. With a happy heart, he decided to stay and continue healing the village. The film ends.